Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and today I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some of my older artwork. You know, I wish I could actually show you all of my artwork that I've done throughout the years, throughout my childhood and such, but I actually lost the overwhelming majority of my artwork. It was in a specific file someplace, and then it just disappeared. It makes me feel like it was my whole childhood. Just poof, gone. If I ever find it, I'll let you guys know. But as it stands, this is what's left of basically my entire childhood. Here, you know, I just drew as little as humanly possible, but still communicated a beautiful woman's face, and went ahead and added this little swirly to it. I don't know. I think it turned out pretty good. Here you can see it before it was inked, so before, after. Both of them look good. I like both of them, but take it for what it's worth. Now, you guys have all seen this image. I made this image digitally. I remade this image digitally for somebody's birthday, and I think it came out looking pretty good the first time, and I think it came out looking pretty good the second time. Here, you know, the actual source material isn't mine, but I took a caricature of Obama that somebody drew, and I searched high and low, and eventually I wound up finding the photograph that the artist was drawing from, and I wanted to see if I could do photocompositing and warping in such a way that I could actually make Obama's face literally look like how he drew it, and I did. I used that caricature as basically a template, and saw if I could do a photorealistic image of his face. Of course, you know, when you're looking for images online to make a professional looking image, it's not the best source. I mean, low resolution images being warped around. So there's problems with the image, but it was enough to confirm I am pretty good at photocompositing and photo manipulation. I was thinking about creating a font back in the day. This was right after my ATV accident. I experimented with it long enough to find out that I suck at it. This is the only remnant of that font that exists. There's problems with it. The kerning will never be able to work out properly, and so I took a photograph of it, even though it didn't include the whole thing, and to be honest, this is the best thing that came out of working on that font. And everyone that sees this says, I want to see the whole font. I want to see A through Z. And, well, not only can you not, but if you actually saw A through Z, then you'd more so wonder, well, what's the point of me looking at this? So this is enough of the font to make you want more, but, you know, not so much to where you're wondering why are you looking at a bunch of letters of the alphabet. Does that make sense? Now, this is a series of photographs that I took off of DeviantArt. Every single one of these images, they had in their description that these images could be used instead of photocompositing, and so I went ahead and did it, or used as stock images, basically. All of the grass here was dead originally, and so I upped the green channel, and the sun rays, none of them are real at all. I created those all on my own, and this dude wasn't even here originally, and the shadow I went ahead and created all on my own. And I really like how this image came out, but it got me to think when it was all said and done, well, congratulations, you have a guy with a guitar in the middle of an empty field. Why? But it looks cool. And here's an image that I drew. It says 2004. This right here was a lady that was supposed to live on a really dangerous planet. Although the women like having long hair and everything instead of at least the culture of the society, the idea was that they actually used their hair as a means to kind of tie their hair. It's a weird idea. That way it wouldn't come loose. There's problems with the anatomy and all that, but I think you look at the image and you're thinking, looks good. That's at least what I think. I mean, the main problem that I see with the image is the placement of the ear. I think it I don't know, it doesn't look right to me, and it's all right but executed incorrectly. This was me experimenting with just stock images once again, and I wanted to see if I could make something that looked like a commercial. And, yep, I can. The reflection on the ground is not real. I created that all from scratch, and these are just me pulling out the pen tool and doing squiggly lines on the car itself. Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste, and then pressing Control-T, clicking and dragging, and moving these little ribbons around. Kind of creates this glitch effect and yet simulates the sensation of motion, as if the vehicle's moving fast without necessarily having the wheels turning with it. I didn't want to have some motion blur or anything like that. More like implying that the car wants to be going fast. And it's kind of cool how this light here, it's right here and then it glitches and has another one, and then glitches and has just a little bit of another one, and tiny bit of the bottom of it down here. I thought that was cool, and you see it again down here. It's an effect that I find really interesting, and I might do it again at a later date, but it's just I've never ran into a situation where I felt like, you know what this composition needs? It needs a bunch of weird ribbons. But, you know, who knows? It might happen again someday. This was the first image that I drew of the Orphan Last logo. I drew this when I was working in this podunk town. One of the weirdest experiences of my life working at this little town. But I was originally thinking of making this a tattoo, and I seriously doubt that I'll ever get a tattoo, but it's all blurry, but it says in negative space here, we pick our own authorities. And yeah, I think the original version, the just drawn freehand, turned out looking pretty good. This is an example of some of the stonemasonry that I was doing in that podunk town. Just to kind of zoom in on it. This is the style that the customer wanted, and I think I did a better job than what they were paying for, but I think it came out looking great. And here's another view of the stonemasonry that I did at this house, and again, I think it's exemplary. The idea was that there'd be, later on, people would wind up putting in these pillars here, but these cap here, they had to be in here and sturdy. And the way that I did that was I actually had to pull out a grinder. And for those of you that don't know what a grinder is, it's basically a saw. And with a diamond blade, I had to cut into the stone at an angle. And then I got something called a wall tie. It's just this piece of metal that has holes in it. And I went ahead and just folded it and hammered it into the slit that I cut into these capstones here. And then once I did that, I went ahead and applied epoxy into that slit so that wall tie wouldn't be getting pulled out anytime soon. And then I drilled that wall tie into the wall because, you know, nowadays stonemasonry is usually applied to an already existing structure, which is usually built in wood. And so I went ahead and drilled that wall tie into the wall, and I actually had probably about 5 or 6 wall ties for each of these little capstones up here. When it's all said and done, that's not going anywhere. These they could probably stand there for thousands of years, long after the wood is rotten, and the only thing that would be standing is basically the stonework that I did. I'm confident in the work that I did at this point in time. Different angles of my work that I'm pretty proud of. Me experimenting with more photocompositing pretty early on when I was learning how to use Photoshop. This is all a series of pictures of me when I was probably about 23, 24. This is me just right after I recovered from my ATV accident, but you know, me jumping off of this and me climbing up here was actually pretty difficult because I had to land on one foot jumping off of here because I broke my femur. I was limping around town trying to get back in shape. an image of a heart. I can't really tell you what all of this is, but basically I opened up an encyclopedia and I literally drew from an image inside of an encyclopedia to make sure that I drew a heart correctly. And here you can see me experimenting with the idea of having a heart kind of fading out of existence with this, having a weird symbol here. I don't know, it's weird. Okay, so this is another image of a heart. This is actually the exact same heart that I drew earlier from that encyclopedia. It's just that I decided to do some photoshopping with it, kind of experimenting with what I can do with that image, trying to see if I could create assets that are reusable. The way that I did this, it wasn't reusable, but if I were to do it again, I think I could actually, at this point with more experience, I think I could do it. This image, this is a picture of a friend of mine, and this friend was moving away, and we were thinking that we'd be able to keep in touch with each other if we were both working on a comic book, but pretty soon afterwards my computer took a dump on me. But I had just begun starting to get good at taking panoramic images, and as you can see, there's little glitches going on throughout this picture, and those glitches are me deciding to keep some of the pieces of the previous images in order to construct the panoramic image. And there's bits and pieces of him that are transparent, and the idea was that the character inside of the comic strip would be insane, and the comic strip would be portraying how he perceives reality. And if somebody came up with a photocomposite comic book like this, I think it'd be pretty cool, but it is a lot of work. It's more work than a normal comic book. This image right here, I would say this is the first image that came out exactly the way that I wanted it to, learning how to do Photoshop. Here you can actually see some dolphins inside of some liquid gel pills, and I think they turned out looking pretty good. And this right here is the remnants of my high school. Yeah, this is everything that was left of it. Pretty cool. Basically, occasionally I create images that just seem like doodles and such. This is an image that I'd like to redo. I don't know what it is about the Freemasonry symbol, you know, triangle with an eyeball inside of it, but it's something that appeals to me. I don't know exactly what this shape is, this long upside down teardrop shape is, but kind of looks like a shield. It's almost like a coat of arms, almost. I don't know, I like the composition, so I kept the image around. So if you guys have seen my Patreon launch video, you guys have probably seen this image right here before. I drew this image, and ironically, the second that I posted it online, I had a friend that messaged me and told me that he actually attended a funeral that very day. Here, I was just trying to see what I could do with perspective, and these ideas about a comic book kept running through my head, and there's specific emotions that the comic strip is supposed to kind of evoke. He's not really in a pose where he's like haunted or horrified. It's just that he's surrounded by the dead, and he's just wondering what now. Of course, you know, he's drawn pretty basically, but he still looks like a natural pose sort of thing. This was actually drawn on something no bigger than, it could have been very well posted on something about twice the size of a post-it note. That's how big the original drawing was. This was just a doodle. This is when I was thinking about getting back into artwork. Like there came a point in time where I quit drawing, and this was also another one of those images that was basically drawn on something that's just a little bit bigger than a post-it note. I was just playing around with the idea of having the least amount of detail, trying to tell a story, experimenting with perspective, I would say unsuccessfully, but it does tell a little bit of a story. You can tell that he's running away from possibly a watchtower of some sort. I don't know, I like this image. Maybe someday I might actually fix it, but I think that the composition looks good, and it does indeed tell a story. And here was me experimenting with perspective once again, and storytelling. Storytelling was something that I didn't do very often. I was about 25 years old when I drew this image, and again, this was only drawn on an image a little bit bigger than a post-it note, and yeah, there's not really much in this picture, but this was just me trying to, I don't know, get some sort of inspiration. Occasionally I've quit doing artwork, and every time that I've done that, I just feel like my soul has been kind of ripped out of me, and I'm just kind of going through the motions, and this was me trying to get back into it. But pretty soon after, I drew a bunch of images, even ones that were much more elaborate than this. I wound up getting some feedback where people would look at it and say, "Why?" I'm like, "What do you mean, why? Can you draw a picture like that?" "No, but why would I? Why would you? It's pointless." And I gotta disagree. I mean, I don't know. It's not the world's best picture in the world, but to me, just experimenting, and you know, the swoopy lines up here at the top with the perspective. This is when I didn't really know much about curvilinear perspective. I mean, I knew enough to kind of get by, but I just wanted to kind of play around with the idea with organic lines that are curved, something that I enjoy, trying to make my backgrounds as expressive as possible. Of course, I think I could have made this more expressive if I had a vanishing point, something like right here, and basically placed him much closer, peeking around the corner. It would have added a lot more drama to the scene, a lot more foreshortening, basically, is what I'm saying. That is something that I would like to do. But then again, I do like seeing the cityscape out in the background, and you'd get a lot less of that. Maybe not even any of that if I had put the vanishing point down here. Maybe this is another image that I might go about redoing, kind of fleshing out a bit. This picture and this picture have nothing to do with any of the comic book ideas that I had for that time, but as I said, this was a failed resurgence of me trying to get back into artwork, and this was an image that was actually geared towards getting into a comic book. This was an image that was, again, drawn on an image that was just a little bit bigger than a post-it note, and it's really unclear what's going on. I understand, like, this was all drawn within the same time period, but the idea is that there are pillars here, and another idea is that there's this sculpture right here, and it's been completely obliterated. The idea is that the main character's mental imagery of the perfect woman has been destroyed. You can kind of see this meteor right here crashing into the earth, and little meteors and such like that crashing into this building that he's standing in, and you can see the sun here and sun rays, and little mountains off in the distance. Really basic stuff, but you know, this was me experimenting. As basic of an image as this is, and as informal as the perspective work is inside of this image, it's information that informed me that I am capable of telling a story. It's not the best image in the world, but the composition does work, and the idea here with all these lines, these motion lines, the idea was that there would be a heart here fading out of existence or something. This is something that, like experimental imagery that I might use inside of a comic book at some point in time, but maybe not, probably not. This was the first image I did at that time, actually, when I was about 25 years old, drawing this image, trying to see if I still could perceive the idea of foreshortening. This is a perfect example of what foreshortening is. You can see his foot right here, and it's pointed right at us, like this is his calf right here, this is his thigh. You know, you can totally see it. The foreshortening on his foot here isn't as clear, it doesn't make as much sense. His torso is a little bit skewed going out or up and to the left here. I guess it's fine the way it is. I mean, like, if it was just a little bit flatter, it would be a little bit more convincing, and just kind of reorganizing things. You know, the line of center on his chest is kind of not quite right, but again, this was an image just a little bit bigger than a post-it note, but it turned out looking really good. Again, another picture that was no bigger than a post-it note. Just me experimenting with foreshortening, no references at all, experimenting with perspective and what I can do with it, with as few rules as humanly possible for the perspective. What can I create with the fewest amount of rules? And you can also see me experimenting with foreshortening, experimenting with anatomy, and I don't know why someone would necessarily be in this pose. Like, his hand is like reaching out to us. I mean, it looks dramatic, but it doesn't make sense. No one stands in that pose where it's like, where he looks at his hand and he's asking himself, what have I done? And he's just reaching out, just arbitrarily out into space. It doesn't make much sense to me. But it looks kind of cool. Even though his pose makes no sense and the foreshortening with his forearm makes no sense, and yeah, the anatomy's kind of wonky. And this is me after I inked it, just trying to experiment with inking, trying to see if I preferred drawing digitally or with pencil and paper. I do like drawing with pencil and paper, but there's more of a chance to make errors that can't be fixed, and so you run the risk of needing to redraw the exact same image, but done better when you're drawing with pencil and paper. There's a lot of things that you can't fix inside of a pencil and paper drawing, especially when you're inking. If you screw up something like proportions and such on a digital medium, you can just select and transform, and that's no problem in a digital media, but on pencil and paper you have to erase and redraw. Trying to play around with, I don't know, like Greek architectural ideas and combining it with the concept of graphic design and comic books. Todd McFarlane, one of the most successful comic book artists of the 1990s, he got known inside of the comic book industry for some of the reason is because he would do graphic design with his artwork, with his comic book work, and I thought maybe trying to experiment with imagery that we've seen before and graphic design would be interesting. Yeah, you know, her anatomy is all wrong, and you know, she's got these broad shoulders. She needed to have less muscular, big shoulders, bigger hips. Of course, her head looks kind of wonky, but it is kind of a basic drawing, like just barely bigger than a post-it note. You know, sometimes when I draw, I kind of work with a basic sketch that looks cool as a basic sketch where the proportions are one way, and as I flesh out the image I can see that the proportions don't work, and so I adjust it. And I drew this 100% with a pen, and you know, you can see that it's inspired by the anatomy of a human being, but this is me kind of trying out something that's, I don't know, more abstract to the point to where it's almost modern art. It's just something I was playing with, but I sometimes like the original sketch, and since this was drawn in ink, it's not like I could just erase that basic sketch, so I decided to keep it in the composition and play around with things a little bit, and so that's how I guess I do modern art. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell or go ahead and follow me on Twitter. A link is supplied in the video description below. And if you guys would like to support my channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the video description below. And if you guys would like to see more of my content, feel free to click on anything that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.